This week on the podcast, we're talking about movie theaters and COVID-19. With AMC recently going billions of dollars into debt and theaters across the world closing due to the pandemic, are movie theaters about to become a thing of the past? Or have movie theaters been struggling for a while now and this is just the final blow? Or will they survive? We'll talk about how COVID has affected the movie industry as a whole, not just theaters, and we'll dive into some movie theater history, as well as some predictions about where things go from here. You know, there's all those streaming platforms and that new internet thing that everyone's been talking about. So stick around for all of that and more. Oh, and you can now catch the Behind the Screen podcast on Spotify. Hello there and welcome back to the Behind the Screen podcast. I am your esteemed host, Dr. Tyler Lemko. Don't look up my credentials. And joining me today is the lovely Sarag Maladian.
Just regular Sarag, Mr. Sarag, no doctor for me. No, I'm still studying.
Let's start it off. My question for you, Sarag, is did COVID kill the movie theater?
Kill is a very specific, oh jeez. Yes. Killing, I don't know, because they're technically still around, as we know.
Are they though? Or are they like just drying up?
Well, right now, at the moment, they're losing tons of money. You know, they're reporting lots of losses. They are slowly opening up again. But as we saw in like Los Angeles and other like major cities in America, they are closing their doors immediately. And here in Canada, we haven't. I don't even think we've opened up our theaters. There's no news about that. There's It's interesting because AMC will talk about like how they're gonna move forward in the coming months. But then it doesn't really apply to like Canadian movie theaters.
Right.
So yeah.
But it's a tough sell, you know? Like, how are you gonna pack 200 people into a tiny room to watch a movie?
Exactly. And let's be honest, there's been a lot of death blows dealt to movie theaters. And this is certainly like one of the bigger ones too, is COVID, this COVID business. It's, so it's not entirely just, like COVID itself, but, the fact is that there are, fans of movie theaters, regardless of that movie theater experience, and they can't go to it, So not only are they losing like just casual fans, they're losing everybody. They're losing their hardcore fan base,
Because movie theaters, like to go back to what you were saying, they've been kind of hurting for a while now, right?
Correct.
I think there's been a steady decline over at least the last decade. As we'll get into it a bit later, but as more and more options come out, why would you leave the comfort of your home? Like, what other reasons are there that movie theaters aren't really a viable option anymore? There's the large groups is obviously the most glaring one. What else comes to mind?
Well, obviously, there's things like, not obviously, but, just streaming services in general, Netflix, coming in with their, can I say big dick?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, that's good to know. No, but streaming services really did hurt movie theaters and obviously television as well.
I read a stat that in the 30s, I think it was 65% of Americans visited a movie theater each week, and that number today is like 10%.
Exactly. Yeah. Back then, even it was probably not only just like this cool kind of thing we're gonna go out and do, but even back then it was like, we're going out. It's time to,
it was an event.
Nice. Yeah, it's an event. Anytime you leave your home, it's like this big, crazy event. Whereas now, it's, we go take airplane rides in our flip flops. It's like there's just no respect, really.
what a pompous species we are.
I know, right? We could fly in the sky and we'll wear our sweatpants.
Yeah.
I know, it's nuts.
I miss the days when you had to like going to the movie theater was a big deal.
Absolutely. And that's really the thing now. It's you're kind of losing the like that, not quite a blockbuster hit, but not quite like an indie film, like just that middle of the ground, like simple kind of thrillers and shit like that. This just doesn't
Yeah.
exist anymore. And it's, increasingly becoming this thing where you go to the movie theaters to watch what is ostensibly like a really fun roller coaster ride, like a spectacle. I mean, that's truly why I go to movie theaters now, is just to be like, I want to see this on the biggest screen possible, because these movies are huge now. Obviously, talk about superhero films for the most part.
Yeah, those grandiose spectacle
Yes.
films that were like they used to be one out of every dozen or so, or even less ratio wise, has become the norm.
And it's even just things like, it has to be like a brand name. It has to be something that people recognize. I mean, if you're not doing like a superhero film, it's like something based off a book, or it's something based off of an older movie, or it's just something that's been already done before.
Hmm.
They got to repackage because, again, people aren't going to movie theaters anymore,
And
and
they're
they're
kind
trying to
of
figure out why.
yeah, and I think the trying to figure out why is the interesting part, and rather than like figure out what people want, they're sort of just banking on what already worked,
Yes.
which is not a very creative solution. They're rather than be like, okay, things are getting a little stale, a little dull. Let's put some work into innovating film.
Yes.
Instead, it's just, oh, Groundhog Day was popular. Let's make a new one with Ryan Reynolds. Like that's it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's which everyone's clamoring for
Yeah,
that.
I'll
I
I'll
can't
go
wait.
to it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I love it.
Like the cultural real estate that Walt Disney Company owns is astronomical. Like it's not quite a monopoly, but I also don't feel guilty using the word in this conversation
No.
because the amount of
No.
studios and the amount of platforms and the amount they own ESPN, they own sports. Like
Yep.
Disney owns everything, and it's only a matter of time where like the disparity just keeps growing and growing. There's fewer and fewer small studios. There's fewer and fewer independent production companies. Are we on a path where entertainment industry is just the Disney company?
I don't think so, because I think there are rules in place where they will. I mean, there are rules in place where you can't have a monopoly, right? But I mean, is it gonna be like three companies that own everything? Because let's not forget, Warner Brothers does own HBO or something. I don't know what the exact deal is, but I know it's like something like that, where it's like they're kind of like the second biggest. No one really talks about that. It's just, I think it'll just end up being like three really big companies,
Mm-hmm.
or like, how it kind of, Hollywood was in like when it first started, right? There were like four or five major studios,
Yeah,
and then, maybe like a few, maybe like independent studios, but they were, I think you'll have still independent studios or whatever, like smaller companies making smaller things, but they'll probably be owned by bigger companies, you know.
right. What
Uh,
like you mentioned like in Hollywood back in the day, it's true. In the I was reading up on this in the 20s. There was actually something they were called the Big Five.
right,
Like the five large companies were RKO Radio Pictures, 20th Century Fox, Paramount Pictures, Warner Bros, and MGM, Metro Goldwyn Mayer. Um, and yeah, like so it's not anything new that there's just a handful of big players.
exactly. I think maybe they're just, maybe cleaning house and going like, okay, there's just too much. Well, yeah, it's not the best thing, but let's not also forget, like, it's not necessarily a bad thing to where, say something like Disney owns. I mean, for a while, let's not forget Disney owned Miramax, or it
Hmm.
technically still owns Miramax, and though that studio, or that production company, whatever, Miramax, they made, ostensibly some of the most popular R-rated films of like the 20th century leading into the 21st century, and that was owned by Disney, so
Right.
I don't know. Like, I don't believe in, like, when Disney does buy companies and people are like, oh crap, the Disneyfication of these things. I don't necessarily, and I'm not super worried. They bought Fox and people were worried that, like, oh no, they're going to ruin all these franchises. And they're still going like, hey, it doesn't mean we're going to put all the R-rated stuff in the Disney camp. Like, Disney also owns Hulu, or they got some kind of stake in Hulu. So it's like, the kind of, they had like different platforms for them to like kind of distribute all that stuff out.
Yeah, well, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, they know what they're doing. At the end of the day, it's harder for people, like, it'll be harder for content creators like us to maybe one day want to talk about these things on our platforms because, Disney is very litigious.
Let's come back to like what's plaguing the movie theaters today. There's also the issue of just there's nothing being produced. Nothing can be produced right now. You can't, put together a movie set and film a movie. So, like, not only is there are movie theaters struggling to get people in the doors, but they don't really have anything new to promote.
I was trying to find, like, a stat that was, like, kind of going, like I don't know, just some crazy not scientist, but, like, some movie expert going, like,
I like the idea of a movie scientist, though.
Some movie, I know. That's what we are. I don't know why, that's really what we are right now.
Right. So. I'm a doctor. You're a movie scientist.
I'm a movie scientist, exactly. And they got to ask these movies, and there's not one single movie scientist out there who can, like, I was able to find talking about exactly what you're saying, which is, holy shit, guys, everything's on hold. What are we going to do? What's the business going to look like in a few months? Because they're going month by month. I mean, movie theaters are opening up and going like, gotta close it, tomorrow. And, there's that Christopher Nolan movie. It was supposed to come out in July and kind of like, be like the reason like it would bring people back into movie theaters and stuff. And it's like, you can't, no, it's,
we're not there yet.
If the government says it ain't going to be, things like this ain't going to be opening up, then it's not going to be opening up.
Yeah. Well, I was even reading today that Disney might put Black Widow on the platform rather than wait for the movie release, which frankly might even be better for them because you avoid a bomb in that case. Like, if no one's going to go.
Yeah. I was just thinking the other day how all these studios are holding on to these movies that are ready to go.
Yeah.
Like Wonder Woman, like Black Widow, like the new James Bond, like I think the Jurassic Park, maybe not actually. I think that delayed in production. But like just like so many movies that they're just holding on to. And what's really interesting is when COVID hit, there was, I want to say like it was like The Invisible Man was just in the theaters, and like Bloodshot with like Vin Diesel or something, like these like not really blockbuster films, just like
you
those,
take
like,
that back. Bloodshot was a masterpiece.
Probably. I'm not trying to crap on these films, but I'm just saying, like, they're not, that you could make the argument that any of those movies could have fallen into, like, a summer blockbuster rhythm, but I don't know, for whatever reasons, they got released in February or March or whatever, and then COVID happened, and then they just released them on their streaming platform later. Right. So it's like they do have the capabilities to do these things, but I guess they're just holding on to it because they're looking at the ratio going like, okay, well, look, we got these movie theaters. That's like our bread, they make us this ton of money. We can't lose out on that by putting it on this platform. But then you got to look at the numbers like now,
right,
and realize like I straight up will wait until Black Widow, is on some kind of streaming platform because I do not want to go into a movie theater.
Exactly, same.
Yeah. And that's what they're looking at. So,
and it's it's obviously an unprecedented thing to happen in the movie industry because timeline-wise, it doesn't really. I don't see how it is gonna work out or make sense because, like you were saying, there's this backlog of finished movies that have yet to be released. Once those get released, whether in theaters or on streaming platforms, there's no follow-up because nothing new is getting made right now. So there's going to be a gap between these finished movies being released and a new batch of new movies probably in over a year's time. There's going to be an incredible strain on production to be like super efficient. Mm-hmm. They're going to try and bang out movies in like a month.
And nobody's really talking about that.
But imagine you're a major studio and two unknown guys come to you with a movie idea that's kind of long and it's kind of a drama and they're not proven and they're nobody's. You're not going to make it, but like that could be the next Good Will Hunting. Like,
you have no idea exactly. Well, I mean, we can talk about just like the luck of Hollywood. You know, there's so many things that are probably masterpieces that will never see the light of day. You know. I guarantee you, if it were up to the studios, they would find the streaming platforms. They would do the rental. They don't give a crap. They just want the profit. They don't care about I truly don't think they care about like saving movie theaters and stuff like that. I don't think.
I agree. And from the viewer's perspective, like, if I could pay $20 and stay home and watch that movie on my big screen TV with my free popcorn and my free soda, that I'm not gonna, at a movie theater it cost me $49 to have a soda and a popcorn. In comparison, obviously not in the last few months, but in the last 5 years, I'd say I've been to a dozen NBA games. Mm-hmm. And without fail, every single time I'm at an NBA game, there reaches a point in the second or third quarter where I think to myself, I wish I was home.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's similar where like our homes are getting better and better by the day. The amount of technology and things that we have at our disposal whenever we want are incredible. To leave our phones in our pockets, which we're all addicted to, and go sit in a movie theater surrounded by strangers eating overpriced snacks, and you have to travel there to and fro. It's a bad deal.
It is. No, I've had that same feeling watching like, musicians, like bands, like going to concerts for bands I absolutely love and adore, and going like, I could really leave right now.
I'll listen to this song in my car on the drive home.
Yeah.
It's way better that
exactly.
way.
I'll just listen to it. It's a dirty environment. If you really stop and look at a movie theater, or like your typical movie theater chain, everyone's an idiot, even you. We're no better. I mean, as much as I want to feel like I'm like, this, like, I go to the movie theaters, right? I'm sure I'm bothering somebody,
Right, yeah.
For all the stuff that I hate about the movie theater experience, I absolutely love watching a movie when it's packed with people and we're all experiencing this thing together. And I've watched movies that are not funny that were so funny in a packed room, with an audience. I've seen movies that I didn't find scary that were scary because everybody in the movie theater is scared,
That's a great
maybe that's
point.
just me. Maybe I just, I'm an empathetic dude. I just feed off people's energies and stuff. But
no, that's a great point. There is something to be said about the movie group, watching it as a group dynamic. There's nothing better than someone shouting something absurd in a movie theater and gets the whole place laughing.
It's the best. And I don't know. And that's the thing. It's like every couple of years, it feels like everyone's like, is this the end of television? Is this the end of movie theaters? And it's like, I don't know if it's necessarily the end or if it's just an evolution or if it's just like the next step to the other thing. I don't think maybe cable TV is dead, but it's not. The idea of a show isn't really dead.
Cable TV might be dead. Shows aren't the same way. Movies aren't going anywhere, but movie theaters, which is, the topic for today, certainly in trouble.
Yes.
What's your favorite movie theater experience?
Oh my gosh, the most recent one I've ever had was watching Avengers Endgame, like on opening night. I think it was even Thursday. I wasn't even planning on going on opening night because I was like, that's too crazy. We're just in this packed theater. And it was insane. It was so much fun to watch that with everybody. And like, I there's not like a specific moment, but it was like we were all in this thing because it was like a culmination of like we all did our homework. We watched 20 movies, and this is it. We're gonna see like a few storylines finally pay off.
It's literally.
And it was like emotional. I was like, it was the first time I like jumped out of my seat and like cheered, and I cried. Oh, weeped.
Of course.
And so many moments in the film.
Well, it's true. It's I don't know, probably how many people are in a theater like that? 200 people? 250?
Yes, yeah.
It's 250 people who have put in the same decade of work to reach this point, and the energy in there, like, you go opening night, you're almost shunned if you don't wear a costume. That's how intense it gets.
Exactly.
We've talked about how much movie theaters are hurting, how much movie production is at a stall right now. Let's talk about what happens next.
Yes.
Let's look towards the future.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here? We touched on streaming services a little bit. Within the context of movie theaters specifically, where can they go? They could obviously install some hand sanitizers, make the seats a little farther apart. There's a health and safety protocol they could put into place. However, I'd say a large majority of the protocol that they will have to institute probably won't be great for business.
Well, how do you eat popcorn with a mask on? How do you,
Yeah.
I think, actually, here's my fix. I think drive-ins are probably going to be the way people will experience films from now on.
Interesting.
It kind of meshes both worlds of, like, you're in your car, so it's like an extension of your home to some degree, right? And you also are, you're going to be sealed away from everybody else, but you're kind of watching it with everybody at the same time, and you're experiencing it. I think that's kind of where it's moving to. I mean, we're both comedians, so we're seeing a lot of comedy shows now happening in drive-ins and stuff. And we're seeing, like, just like more things happening. I just feel like, oh, maybe they're not necessarily, like, maybe that's going to come back,
So I think it's safe to say that small theaters, boutiques and like small chains probably won't fare too well. I don't want to go so far as to say like they're going to go extinct. Theaters will probably remain. However, the ownership, like we were talking about earlier, will probably funnel into like one of a handful of major companies that own them. Because for a Disney or a Netflix or stuff like that, it makes sense for them to own movie theaters. Like they're in a way they're the only ones that can actually save movie theaters, because they're the only ones that can actually utilize them properly and make them a part of their total offering. That could even be a cool thing. Like, imagine you sign up, how there's like different tiers for Netflix?
Yeah.
Imagine there's an extra one where for, $22 a month, you get 3 movie passes and you can go.
I think that's where, the next look, it's going to be really fascinating to see how, like, the landscape changes in the next few years, because it is going to probably change for the, And I don't know if it'll probably be the better for us, for the consumer. Because if anything, it ends up movie theaters are completely gone, and it's just directly sold to us, in the comfort.
And then we just never leave our house ever.
We just never leave.
We put on VR goggles, and we never wear pants again.
I just don't see movie theaters going away, because there's still going to be people who just kind of enjoy the experience. Maybe we won't go out all the time, but I still do miss it. I do miss the being around all those people. So
yeah. Let's talk about how we got to where we are. Movie theaters in general, like you were saying earlier, used to be an event, used to be a thing that you were excited to go out to and get dressed up for. Movie theaters are an old thing. I was doing a bit of research. Look at, even in the last few years, what's happened with 3D and IMAX, and there's theaters with couches and waiters that bring you beers and stuff. Like, it's crazy where we've gotten to.
Yeah.
Like, the theater has evolved to such a wild thing. It's almost difficult to fathom it taking a step back now.
Yes, I know. And I just think it's not gonna necessarily go away. They'll just adapt to the situation like they did in the past, right? When the advent of like blockbuster films came out, not the chain, I mean like film, like summer blockbusters. So like Jaws comes out, and that kind of like sets the framework for like, okay, well, now there's something called like summer blockbusters, just like huge event films, basically. And that idea of like, oh my god, this movie to get us like hyped and excited for and then but you couldn't like necessarily watch it again after the movie theater experience was over because there was no home video release. Maybe I guess you would catch it on maybe like television or something if it would play, but there was
like 7 years later.
Yeah,
you'd have to wait until you're an adult to see it again.
Exactly.
Back when you were a kid.
Yeah, exactly. You're a different human at that point. So, and then the advent of like the home video, and a lot of people. I remember people were of the idea that like that would start creating kind of like this. They probably were worried like, oh well, if we're giving it to them this way, will they ever? Why would they want to go visit movie theaters? And it's like, well, it's two different experiences, And that's at the end of the day, that's what you're kind of getting still with like watching it at home. It'll never be as cool as or as grand as watching it in the movie theater, especially with these summer blockbuster films.
Do you think that the feeling of going to a movie theater and being surrounded by people in a theater and watching something for the first time is going to be reminiscent of like the feeling of walking through the aisles at Blockbuster?
Yes.
Like, we think back fondly about that.
Yes.
It'll probably be they're going to go hand in hand.
Yeah. Like, just thinking about, like, going, like, through just, like, any video store. It doesn't have to be a Blockbuster. Yeah, just that feeling of, like, stale Skittles.
The best. And like, we're going to miss sticky floors.
Oh, will we, though? Will we?
We talked about streaming platforms, but now that things are going more and more in-home, do you foresee it being an issue with downloads and torrents? Like, I kind of have a hunch we're going to see an uptick in illegal movie releases.
I think people will probably, rather than torrent, they'll probably just visit those, like, not Netflix websites, and just stream movies that way. I find I don't know. I don't know if they'll necessarily get an uptick in that. I think personally for me and just from like the friends that I have, none of us really torrent. I mean, we never have. And torrented films.
No one I know ever has.
No, it's illegal and totally wrong. You shouldn't do it. There's just like other ways of doing that, and to getting that. So, but will those see an uptick? Those other ways of accessing kind of movies illegally? Probably.
Yeah.
But a lot of times too, it's like I can't speak for myself, but I know a few people.
What do you mean? That's the only person you can speak for is yourself.
Well, I'm just saying because I would never torrent a film.
Oh, right.
But I know of people who would totally like watch a film, dig it, and go like, well, I'm just gonna find a version of this now online, so I can just hold me over until the the Netflix or until I could buy it on Blu-ray or whatever. I've never done that, but I know a lot of people who do that.
The invention of the at-home movie and VHSs and then DVDs and watching them online now, the ease at which we have access to these movies has to, completely change popular culture, because we are such a pop culture environment nowadays because of how much is easily accessible. Whereas 30 years ago, there wasn't as much, the pop culture bubble was a lot smaller.
I know, absolutely. All I can say, you're absolutely right. And I think you're on to something there. I say we solved it right now.
What do you think of this?
Yeah.
I'm trying to just spitball some solutions here for movie theaters, because sometimes I got to do all the work in these movie theaters to, I'll bail them out. So how do you feel about this idea? What if movies go back to being like more of a show, like more of a spectacle thing, and rather than play 24/7 on a Tuesday night for one viewer, and it's an $11 ticket, what if movies should be something that you put on your best outfit and spend $50 to go see, because it's only going to be screening once that day or once that week even? Like, make it a Broadway type of event.
Well, let's not forget too that this whole COVID situation is putting a lot of people in like economic,
Right. Yeah, they're not going to
strife and whatnot.
spend.
So almost like out of the gate, they want to make movie theaters free or something. Like I don't even
Yeah.
know what the best option would be, but I do think that like maybe the personalized way of experiencing films might be more of a thing. I do think about that often about like well, I don't know if I think about it often, but like that when you were talking about the VIP,
Right.
section of movie theaters where they like have waiters and they give you a couch and they give you a blanket.
I love that. But then again, it's tough. It's tough to justify spending that premium for something luxury like that.
Yeah.
When you can go home and, like we've been talking about, like there is a bordering on infinite amount of content readily available for you to watch. There's more movies and shows than you could watch in a lifetime. So it's tough to say, like, you got to pay for this when there's an infinite amount of free stuff or easier to access stuff at the very least.
If it's not a blockbuster, it's been very hard for movies to like, sustain a lifespan in the movie theater.
Yeah.
If they truly find life after the cinema, it's usually on streaming.
Yeah.
On streaming services. So, anything can. It's bleak, but every time I think, it might be the end of the movie theater, it's like not the end of the movie theater.
Exactly.
So.
It's a cockroach.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not going to be the person who's like, it's the end of the movie theater, and then, there's still like 25 years.
Yeah. So let's wrap this thing up because we're coming to the end here. What, in your opinion, now we're just hypothesizing, is that the word? Hypothesizing?
Hypopimizing.
Now we're hip and hopping.
We're hypnotizing.
Yeah. What do you think that the movie theater, in your opinion, what do you think the movie theater experience is going to evolve into?
I think it'll probably evolve into a mixture of just that drive-in experience, plus like that, they'll probably be pushing more of that like VIP, come watch a movie with like only 10 people in this room, and we'll give you a blanket and we'll give you a hamburger or whatever, and you'll pay $50 for it. I still think the movie theater will exist. There'll be a lot of buffers in between the seats, and whatnot. So it'll be a little weird going into it. But also, I think with time, people will slowly start trickling back into movie theaters, and I think there will be casualties, but I don't think as a whole they're going to go away. Right. I think a lot will probably go away, but I don't think we're going to see the end of them.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're going to see a hefty decrease, that's for sure. Yeah. However, I do think that there will still remain movie theaters. The ownership of those might migrate over to more of these streaming platforms and larger digital platforms who own theaters as assets since they're in the entertainment industry and produce films. And I could see that model we were talking about earlier about like, for the next 7 days, you could spend $20 and rent this new movie at home. I do think that that's where things will head, and that'll become more of the norm, which is fascinating that movie theaters are essentially going to start influencing these streaming platforms, because how do you now put a price point on, it's no longer a database of shows and movies, it's like new releases, which, I guess as I'm saying it, I realize Netflix has been doing that, and Disney Plus and Amazon Prime and all these places have been doing it. So yeah, I guess we're just heading it more in that direction, and just eat your popcorn at home. Sarag, thank you so much. Any parting words?
Just go out. Please don't torrent, and please,
please
don't torrent, and go out there, enjoy movies wherever you can. Do it safely if you can. And that's it, Yeah. I love you all.
Follow Sarag is at Maladian Falcon. I'm Tyler Lemko at T Lemko. Like Sarag said, enjoy your movies. Do it safely. We kind of landed on hurt but not dead.
Hurt but not dead.
Exactly. Final conclusion. Like I mentioned earlier, you can listen to this podcast on Spotify, And that's been the Screenrant podcast, everybody. Hope you enjoyed.
Yay.
Bye.